right? So today we're going to be joined by Mr. Monty Scheinblum, right?
Yep.
Blum? Okay. Yeah, there's Bloom and there's Blum, right?
Well, Bloom, you know what? I learned early on, I don't care.
I grew
I'm
up.
not one of those I'm not one of those people that throws a hissy fit when my name is mispronounced.
Right, right. There's a good, immediately correct. And, I've been around those guys too. So let's get started by you giving us a little bit of your golf journey. I mean, you have a unique background as opposed to some of these other instructors that, you were a professional long driver, correct?
It actually goes back farther than that.
Right.
My dad was a Major League Baseball player, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And when I was in high school, I was pretty good. I mean, but I had an elbow injury when I was a freshman, and I wasn't big enough to play football or basketball. So I got into golf. And like I said, I wasn't very big. I was only about 5'6", maybe 5'7" when I graduated high school. And I was a great wedge player and got a scholarship to UCLA. And then all of a sudden I grew. And not only did I not play very well when I grew, I hit it shorter. I went from like 5'6" to 6 foot in about 3 or 4 months. And I
Wow.
had no coordination whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, like my junior, senior year, I started to hit it like, farther than most of the guys. And then a couple years out of college, I started hitting it farther than everybody. And then I finished second, first, second in the World Long Driving Championship in a 3-year stretch in the early 90s.
Awesome. And then I was about to say you look a lot bigger than 5'6".
No, I'm like 6'2" now. I'm 6'2" now. Yeah, and then, I kind of semi-retired from long driving and tried to make the tour and, got as far as the Corn Ferry Tour. I almost won on the Corn Ferry Tour a couple of times. And, it's like pro golf is like, a terrible addictive drug. Just like it is for the average golfer. You get that little bit of success and you're like, okay, I can make it. And, it took me 10 years to figure out that, you know, I wasn't going to make it because,
Yes.
I'd have that one good week and I'm like, this is all I need to do. And it took me 10 years to figure out that, my chance to make it wasn't there. So then that's when I decided to become an instructor. And, you said I had a strange path to become an instructor. I didn't have the same path as everybody else on how I learned it either. I was very bitter when my playing career was over because I got terrible advice from some of the biggest names in golf instruction that made me worse. And so I spent an entire year studying patterns in golf swings on YouTube and, stuff like that and on TV and stuff. And then the real fun one was I literally spent an entire year where I went to the driving range. I was a trick shot artist for a while, and I spent the entire year going to the driving range, finding the guy that was the most frustrated and the most angry, and I was able to copy his swing, go over to my spot with my iPad and spend the next 3, 4 hours trying to figure out how to fix his swing. And it was never the common ideas that were in golf instruction. And I literally did that every day for 4 or 5 hours for an entire year. And I started to notice patterns in the golf swing that were not prevalent. And then shortly thereafter, all of the technology became available where they started measuring what actually happened in good golf swings and what happened in bad golf swings. And again, went against all of the century old narratives of what you're supposed to do to make your swing better.
Yeah. So let's get into the timelines now. Just roughly, you finished playing professionally in what year, more or less?
2008, I was
Okay.
40.
Okay. Cool. 2008. Now this is why. Now you're segueing into why I want you here right now, because there was a period of time, and where we had to rely on whatever the latest golf rag had, right?
Correct.
Most of it was regurgitated tips and, hold it like a toothpaste or
Yeah,
soft
yeah,
burn
yeah.
or whatever, yeah, that kind of stuff. And we had these perennial top 100 individuals that were donned by these magazines. They would come up with some kind of concepts or whatever, and then sell you the 8 set DVD and yada, 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 right? But I got probably 100 pages of that here,
Nice.
200. That's about 20 years worth of garbage. Not garbage, but, you try to
I
clip
understand.
whatever you think is helpful and accumulate it and refer back to it. And then all of a sudden, this thing called the internet shows up, right? Now, I was on the internet way back when, before it was called the World Wide Web, and you had to know Unix. This is before Al Gore invented it. But now you had a platform for everybody to expose their ideas, right? So the world changed. There was this big disruption, right? And you would get on one of these sites or these chat rooms or these forums or whatever, and guys guys didn't get knocked out because you couldn't punch through the screen. But at the end of the day,
I've wanted to a few times.
at the end of the day, we all became smarter as a result.
Yep.
And I think that you were a big part of that era.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, yeah, yourself, there's a lot of character. A lot of the guys that today are espousing and saying things, and all of a sudden they're top 100 or top instructors or top this, because whatever they said then is starting to kick in and make sense to people, right? And that was you got to be grateful for being part of that, the right place at the right time, right?
Yep.
Because it could have been 1975, and you could have been doing the square to square swing. And and you would say,
Oh
wait a
boy,
minute,
don't
this is
get me
bull.
started.
You would have said, this is bullshit, and nobody would have heard you.
I've actually toned down the rhetoric in the last few years. When I first started to learn what actually happened in the golf swing, I was pretty vocal about saying, this guy, a moron, has no idea what he's talking about. This idiot. Now I just do it, with my friends. And this is gonna seem like the junior high mean girl society, but there's a group of us, and we're not all together. Like, I've got this text thread with this guy, this texter, but there's 4 or 5 guys whose names that everybody would recognize, that I will send them a text and I'm like, look what this imbecile just said. And then they'll be like, how that guy is allowed to teach, you know, the grip to anybody is beyond me. And that's what makes it hard for the average golfer. Cause, if you go through the top 50 Golf Digest top 50 list just came out.
Right.
Okay. And if you go through the list, these are just random numbers. These aren't the actual guys. So don't go to the you know. Um, but like, you look at the list, and 1, 2, 5, 8, 9, 12, 15, 18, 20, those guys are amazing. They're awesome. Everything they says is correct. And then you've got 3, 6, 11, and 15 that, you know, they got lucky with a junior that showed up at their club and he became a famous tour player, and everything they say is crap. And it's hard for the average golfer to discern which people are saying, okay, this is something that will help me, or, you know, just, a used car salesman, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I'm really sorry to say that, you know, the top 15 or 20% of YouTube videos and Instagram posts and TikToks are amazing and the best information that's ever been around. And any golfer who looks at that and tries it is going to make themselves better. But 80 to 85% is garbage and will make you worse long term. And the problem is that, you know, golfers will do this. And here, there's a really important point here. If you're struggling, something that makes sense to you is probably terrible.
Okay.
Because if you're struggling, your perception of what you're supposed to do is wrong. So if your perception of what you're supposed to do is wrong, and you see something on Instagram that makes sense to you, that's wrong, most likely. And I know this every day because every single day I will post something on Instagram or I will see something posted by one of my friends, and I'll look in the comments on my channel and on their channels, and some 15 handicap with it. This is the dumbest thing. You're a
By the way,
fucking idiot. Nobody good does this. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, boss. Look at your
this
swing,
is uncensored.
you know?
Okay. So this is uncensored. This is uncensored. It's going to go live. So if
Oh
you
yeah.
want to drop a few bombs, I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
Oh yeah. I'm
Well,
not,
I may do it
I'm not, I'm
occasionally.
not afraid to speak out.
Right. So
Everybody's mad at me already. So I can't
okay.
make it any
So
worse.
so given that, okay, so we'll go to that. The reverse every natural instinct type mentality. So what is the standard? Right. So if in your eyes he's not right or he's not correct or that doesn't work, right? Now, let's say that somebody has got a cadre of students, let's say a population of about 50 students, right? And he or she is teaching whatever, right? Whatever. 65% to 70% of his students are improving. And by that, I mean either they're lowering their handicaps or they're hitting it longer or whatever the standard may be. Does that still make them wrong?
No, because the people that are having that success are teaching the right things.
Okay.
There is the correlation. Here's what happens. So I wrote an article for a website a number of years ago, and I said, if an instructor had Tiger Woods as a student and he taught Tiger Woods to copy Jim Furyk's swing frame by frame, Tiger would still win golf tournaments.
I agree with that.
Okay. So it warps the perception that people know what they're talking about if they have like 1 or 2 star pupils, because in many cases, it was just an extremely talented kid that you could have said, grip it cross handed, take it to the outside, loop it behind you, thrust your hips toward the ball, and roll the face. And that guy worked hard enough and was talented enough to make the tour. But here's what's different now than was different even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, the whole narrative was there's more than one way to swing a golf club. And you could just watch on TV and you turn on the TV and see Hubert Green and
Right.
say, yeah, there's more than one way to swing a golf club, and impact is all that matters. Well, the more they study the swing and the more data that comes out, the more they're finding that there are more similarities in the swing than you see visually and more variance at impact than was previously. So, 20 years ago, it was if 2 guys were debating what was right and what was wrong in a swing, it was a battle of opinions. It was a debate. There's no debate anymore. So you said don't squeeze the toothpaste tube. This has been measured. Elite golfers and long hitters grip the club more firmly than the average golfer. And the worse the golfer, generally, the lighter they're gripping the club, especially slicers. So this is not, and then the old cliche, hold it like a bird, that came from Sam Snead. And I got a firsthand account from one of his relatives that it was a joke. It was sarcasm. The entire, the entire statement was hold the club like a bird, like an eagle trying to get away from you.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so,
that would definitely change the grip pressure, wouldn't it?
correct. And no joke, every day on the lesson tee, I can see the bird grippers the first swing they make. And I'm like, grip it more firmly. They're like, no, 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 like a bird, like an open toothpaste tube. And then I show them the data chart and they're like, really? And I said, really? And then, I tell them about my non-scientific poll that I took when I was teaching a lot out on the tour 10 years ago. I noticed it in short game. So I would go up to tour players and I'd say, do you mind if I ask a question? And they said, sure. And I go, shake my hand how firmly you're gripping that putter, that wedge, that driver. And even little tiny guys that, cut in the circuit. Oh, I don't grip it too firmly. And then they cut off the circulation in my hand. So, so these myths that have been around, everybody's familiar with Chris Como. He's a friend of mine. I just saw him at the Ryder Cup. He was following Xander around and I talked to him for a few minutes. He had me do a presentation at his teaching symposium at the golf show a couple of years ago. And he goes, Monty, I want you to get up there because I know you're not afraid to do it. Tell everybody in the room, tell everybody on the live stream that what they're teaching is wrong. And I said, no problem. And I made this big display with all the common cliches. Grip it like a bird, drop it in the slot, swing to right field, shift your weight, a draw goes farther than a fade, fire the hips, the arms and hands are passive, hold the lag. And I had like 40 of them up there and I slow, smooth tempo. And I said, you guys pick the ones that you like and I'll just prove it for you. And it was pretty entertaining because a lot of people came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, Monty, I've been teaching for 20 years. And in 5 minutes, you disproved the things that I've been teaching. And again, it's not an opinion anymore. These things have been measured. It's out there for anybody that wants to learn to learn.
So it's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact,
Right.
right?
And you know what? There's still some opinions out there. But if you look, the swings on the PGA Tour vary significantly less than they did even 10 years ago because all the young guys on the tour have had the benefit of proper instruction with stuff that has been measured to have. I'll give you a perfect example of a date. I already told you about the grip pressure. So 10 years ago, everybody's always been about this is my left wrist, hold this left wrist angle through impact so you can have shaft lean and compress the ball. And 10 years ago, they put a wrist sensor and 3D sensors on all 150 tour players, and 149 out of 150 were moving like this at impact. So that's just that narrative's been around for 150 years. Hold this wrist angle.
Sure.
And the one guy that did in fact hold that wrist angle got rid of it and isn't doing it anymore.
Right. So I was looking for that Joe Dante. But okay, that being said, if you're now saying, let's look at this stat from the NGF here. It says approximately 17% of golfers take lessons, right?
Right.
I don't know how many golfers there are. There's quite a few, right? So the skill level, the more experienced and skilled golfers are the ones that take lessons. Okay?
Correct.
So would you say that a byproduct of the lack of improvement, because if we say, okay, the average handicap in the last 100 years has dropped maybe one stroke, right? And that's probably a byproduct of agronomy, just better course conditions, right?
Sure.
Putts are rolling better, things you're going to get.
Equipment's better.
The equipment's better, that kind of stuff. But in general, so now you're saying, okay, we have this new paradigm where things are being measured. And these kind of guys, myself included, because I've seen over the course of my life, I've seen quite a high percentage, over 50% of the top 100, because that was the answer. The reality is it just screwed me up beyond repair, right?
Exactly right.
So now,
but you know what? In the next 20 years, it's going to get better.
Yeah. So now,
it takes time.
You get students, reasonable let's say single digit players or
Yes.
that want to get to that next level. So what they're doing is got them shooting in the 70s or low 80s or something. They want to get to the next level. What would you do?
Well, here's the thing is golf has been okay. I'm not making, I mean, there are plenty of good guys out there, but, and the numbers are increasing. I say 10 years ago, maybe only 1% of instructors knew what they were doing.
Okay.
Now it's probably 10%. Okay. So I, here's the way that I teach golf. So it doesn't matter the handicap. It could be a beginner who just took it up or a tour player that isn't as good as they want to be. And it's funny, I had more tour players coming to me 10 years ago than I do now because my reputation has become the hack whisperer. Is people who are not good golfers or who are down into the single digits, they come in, I say, "Oh, this is why you're not better." And they get better immediately. And it's like, so the reputation I've gotten is I quote unquote dumb it down for the average golfer. So I don't have the reputation as having the technical knowledge that it takes for elite golfers, which is kind of ironic, but that's just a reputation. But here's the way that I teach golf at all skill levels. I will say to the golfer, what mixed hit are you struggling with? Like, let's say a guy's a 6 and he wants to get down to a 3. And I said, what one shot is making you be a 6 instead of a 3? And they'll say, Monty, 3 times around, I'll snap hook a ball. Okay. And I've been to 10 instructors and they've gotten me to try and open my hips more and weaken my grip and hold off the release. And I said, and I throw up when I hear all of those things. And I know what I'm gonna see. So, anyways, he gets up there and he hits a ball, and I go, "Your club face is too open coming into impact." And he goes, "That makes no sense whatsoever. My bad miss is a big hook." And I said, "Right." I said, "All things being equal, your swing," and I show him the numbers on the TrackMan, and I show him the wrist graph, and I say, all things being equal, every shot you hit should be a straight miss to the right. And 90% of the time, you're good enough and skilled enough to square it up at the bottom just right where you hit a straight shot. But a few times around, you overcook it and you hit the hook and his head explodes. And I said, getting your hips to fire open more, weakening the grip, and holding off the release, all 3 of those things are going to cause the club to come in even more open. And so he looks and he says, okay, what do I need to do to get the club face to not be so open coming into impact? Well, that's going to be, different every time. And no joke, I say, here it is. Monty, this feels really weird. Getting past this feels really weird is hard for golfers. But Tiger calls that step 3 of making your swing better. You got to get past this feels weird. Um, they 90% of the time, 10% some of the time they give up because this is too hard, this is too weird, it's too different. Bad habit for 20 years, I'm fine. That happens sometimes. But 90% of the time, I get an email within 2 or 3 weeks, and they're like, Monty, I just shot a career low, or I shot, you know, tied my career low. And 6 weeks later, they're like, well, I'm not a 3 yet, but I'm trending from a 6.2 down to a 5.1. And then I see them one more time to kind of reinforce it. And then I see them once or twice a year when they get a little bit off. That's a common thread for me. I don't have people coming to me once a week. I find it unnecessary, a waste of their money and a waste of my time. If you know what you're looking at, you should be able to have someone tell you, here's my miss. This is what I want to get rid of. And then you look at the numbers on the TrackMan or the pressure mat or the wrist graph. You should be able to watch one or two swings and go, there it is.
Okay. So if we go back to your foundations where you said that you went to the range for a year, you observed, you did, and and you thought it out and came up with some conclusions, right? So you came up through empirical type
Yes.
of protocols. Now you have a new generation of kids that come up and they want to wear a lab coat and a
Yes.
thermometer
Yes.
and they want to use scientific terminology, medical terminology, and yada yada yada. It seems that that gets a lot of traction, and
They have no practical understanding.
right. So that's
So,
right.
so look, I mean, people are going to watch this and go, this guy's a dick. And
It is what it is.
whatever it is, but when I said I said before, only about 10% know what they're doing. Two groups are the old school guys that say, I've been teaching golf for 30 years. I know what happens in a good golf swing. I don't need this lab coat stuff that you're talking
Crutch.
about.
It's crutch.
Right,
I
right.
need that crutch.
And then there's the young guys that have, they can't break 80, but they read all of the reports and they think they know everything. There's a proper balance between practical experience and academic experience. And I'm sorry to say, if you don't have a lot of both, you're just not going to be very good at making people better, you know? And so, this, it's hard for me to talk about this sometimes without me sounding like I know everything. I'm the best. Nobody, I never want to come off that way because there's so many good guys out there that know what they're doing, have the academic experience and the practical experience. But this is my experience on my lesson team. People will come to me, say, Monty, I've been playing golf for 20 years. I've taken lessons from some of the top guys in the country. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on golf lessons. Nobody can solve my early extension. Nobody can solve my over the top, whatever, whatever, whatever. And it's never, I go, who have you been to? And it's never one of the guys that I would say, it's never a Chris Como or an AMG or a Dana Dahlquist that I hear this from. It's either an old school guy or, well, this guy's supposed to be the best in my area. And I'm like, yeah, I've had some people come from him before. So I'll digress here and tell a funny story. I gave a golf school in a fairly small town. You know, it's a big town for that state, but it's not, I do golf schools
Yeah.
in New York and Phoenix. It's a
Yeah.
smaller Midwest state.
Sure.
And I got 8 people show up. And every single one of them, when they were at shaft parallel to start the backswing, their club faces were pointed to the sky. And I'm like, what's going on here? Is there something in the water? So finally I couldn't resist. I go, I have a question. Why are all of you having your club face pointed to the sky that early in the backswing? And they're like, well, you're supposed to do that. And I go, you are? And they go,
Want
yeah.
if you want to
And I
slice it
said,
off the planet.
right. And they're like, I go, okay, tell me the premise behind this. They're like, well, the force that you create opening the face early in the swing and then shutting it back down coming into impact, that creates club head speed and compression. And I said, where did you guys learn this? And they're like, oh, from this guy. They gave his name. And, he's the best guy in the state. And I said, okay. I said, all right, I'll make you guys a deal. We'll just work on short game and putting for now. If you guys go to YouTube tonight and find me one guy in the history of golf who pointed the club face to the sky this early in the swing and then rolled it down like that, I will teach you guys how to do that. And the entire school is free for all of you. Okay. And they all come back and they're like, yeah, I couldn't find anyone. Nicholas, Tiger, blah, blah, blah. One guy really disheveled, looked like he was hungover. He goes, Monty, I was up all night. I literally looked at 1,000 videos of professional golfers and not one of them was more than toe up, and most of them were slightly toe down. And I go, there you go. And they're like, why would he teach that? I said, I haven't the faintest idea. I come to find out this guy was an instructor at some little podunk uni course, and this 12-year-old girl ran through there, and he gave her lessons, and she made the LPGA tour. So then he became the best teacher in the state. So now this is obviously an extreme example. There aren't many people out there teaching nonsense like that, but there are so many people out there, like I said, 80 to 90% teaching old, antiquated ideas. And whenever I get in a debate on the internet over these ideas, I'm like, look, man, I go, they measured this. Here's what it happens. Here's what good players do. Here's what bad players do. You get the bad players to do what the good players are doing, they'll be better. And they're like, there have been good golfers for 100 years. We don't need this new technology. I'm like, you know what? I agree. Doctors used to keep people alive without x-rays, MRIs, blood panels, and stethoscopes. So the next time you go to the doctor, you're not allowed to use any of that stuff. Just have the doctor put his hand on your chest and put some leeches on your arm, and you'll be better. So, there's too many antiquated, the grip it like a bird thing. It's an antiquated, disproven idea. And I could sit here for hours and tell you. And here's the problem is the people that don't get lessons are getting what I call the grandfather effect. Everybody learned how to play golf when their grandfather took them to the driving range. And while being very well meaning, they're just filling the little kid's head with the same old bullshit that's been around for 100 years. And you'll enjoy this story. I'm a storyteller.
I like it. I like it.
So my son is an elite athlete. He's the starting quarterback on the high school football team. He plays on the basketball team. On the baseball team, he hit over 300. The kid's an athlete.
Three sport, huh?
Yeah. So he's only played like 30 rounds of golf in his life, and he's shot par before. I mean, he'll shoot a bunch of twos and threes because he doesn't know how to play golf. But the kid's got a great swing. The only lesson I ever give him, I wouldn't let him grip it like this. I taught him how to grip it, and I just say, go hit it. So one day he's playing with his grandfather, who is my ex-wife's father, who I get along with fine. I got nothing against him. Never broken 90 in his life. My son beats him, and every time he hits a bad shot, he tries to give him swing tips. And one day he made the mistake of saying, Papa, my dad told me not to do that. And he goes, listen, Ronan, I've been reading Golf Digest and playing golf since before your dad was born. He doesn't know everything. And I'm just like, and that's the mentality that's out there. People think they know. And look, I know what I know because I've literally spent 4,000 hours a year teaching golf, playing golf, studying data, studying the swings of pros and stuff. Even if I was a moron, and I like to think I would have some insight. So as you can see, my frustration is not, yeah, of course I'm a little bit bitter. I didn't get the proper instruction that might have helped me make the tour, but I see the pain and frustration of golfers every day. And I don't like that. I want people to have fun when they play golf. And I know they're frustrated because they're trying to do the wrong things.
Okay. So that being said, now, okay, you mentioned AMG, right? So Mike and Sean, both good guys, and they both have a really good content. So when they're looking at this gears, right? So this is the optimal, right? Gears would be optimal system. Is this, so they're looking at the system and what it's giving them. This is their interpretation of what the pro is doing, or is this?
Okay, that's a great comment. They make two kinds of videos.
Okay.
They make and people always hate the first group. They make non-editorial videos where they're like, look, we measured this. Here it is. Okay. there's no debating those videos. And people go ape shit on those. No, no, no. No. It is what it is. Okay. And there was a famous interaction between them and a guy who didn't like the data because it disproved what he was teaching. And he got in an online war with them. And then he tried to use gear. He doesn't own a Gears. He tried to bring a Gears printout of Dustin Johnson to disprove what they said in their video. And then the owner of Gears come and said, well, yeah, he misread that number by 45 degrees. So, yeah, some of their videos, as much as you hate what they say because they go against what you think,
I don't
it's
know.
just
I don't have any. I kind
no,
of.
no, I'm not saying you. I'm talking
Okay,
about
in general, in
people.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like looking at your blood panel and your cholesterol is double what it should be and go, you know what? I don't fucking like that. I'm going to continue to eat cheeseburgers. I don't give a shit. Okay. So, and I go through that every day. I'll put up a video and I'm like, here's Bryson DeChambeau. And you can see his hands accelerate really early. This is objective data. Elite golfers and long hitters accelerate their hands early in the downswing, and then they slow down at the bottom. Amateurs have their arms and hands way behind their body. Then they have to speed them up at the bottom in order to get the club to the ball. Extreme lack of club head speed from 100 years of fire the body and the arms and hands are along for the ride. And then I get these comments like, you're acting like there's only one way to swing a golf club. That's the stupidest thing ever. Anybody who says you should accelerate your hands is dumb. Nobody good does that. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, boss. They measured, you know, it's a measured fact. So these are the kinds of things that so getting back to the AMG guys, they have their non-editorial, here's what we've measured, here are the graphs that we got, here's what they say.
And then go ahead.
And
So
then they have a second group where they're like, here's our interpretation on how to put that data into practical use.
yeah, they would probably be. So I met Sean Webb. I'm going to say 2011, 2012. Don't know if he remembers. They say, hey, you got to talk to that kid. He's got everything. He wasn't with Mike yet. I think it was him at the PGA show. So if he had gears or whatever it was he had in 2012 or 11, by now he probably knows how to use it.
Exactly right. And there was some there was something really gratifying that like 10 years ago, I have it still, both Sean and Mike separately sent me these messages. One of them said, how did you figure out XYZ without a 3D system? And I said, I don't know. I studied the patterns and fooled around with it on the range, and this is what seemed to make sense to me. And he goes, that's really impressive because nobody ever said that before. And only when we started seeing this on Gears did we know it was true. And I'm like, well, thank you very much. And then the other one said they called me the OG of online golf.
The OG.
So I love those guys. I learn every time they put something out, I watch it because I learn something from every video they put out.
That's good. I mean, they go out and they put their stuff out there and there's been wars, crossfires there with another camp regarding certain things that they put out there and
Yeah, I know. I've seen it.
and it's back and forth. But both entities have access to this 3D. You know what I mean? They both have access to the gears.
And you know what? They're you know, like I said, there's two ways to look at the data. Here's the data, here's what it says. And most of the good instructors don't argue too much about that. Then it's how do we apply this to make people better? That's where the back and forth happens.
Well, if you want to prove your theory right, right, the scientific method says, okay, if I have to be objective about what I believe, correct? So if you're on the range by yourself and you're taking all these swings and you're thinking that this does this and in reality it's doing something else, then you need to start reevaluate what your, you know what I mean? I mean, that would be the proper thing to
100%.
do, right?
Yep.
If you've been teaching a system or a pattern or a move or whatever, and the machine says, hey, this isn't, at that point, for the good of the game, you should step back and say, okay, let me
But
reevaluate this.
but you know what? You know this. Everybody knows this. Human beings tend to refute anything that goes against their belief. Okay. And no joke. I'll be transparent. I give a lot of one-time lessons. And here's why. People will come in and they'll say, Monty, I heard from Joe and Tom and Dick that you're the man and you're the best guy there is, and blah, blah, you know more than everybody. I'm like, well, I wouldn't say that, but thank you. And they're like, I have been losing club head speed steadily for the last 5 years because I'm getting older. And I said, okay, what are you trying to do? And they say something, and I go, okay, let me see you hit a few. And I'll go, well, what you're trying to do is actually the main, and not age, the main reason why you're losing club head speed. Oh no, well, you're supposed to do that. And I'm like, well, you're really not. And they say, well, I don't think you're right. And I'm like, that's fine. Okay. And I said, okay, give me 5 swings with your way. So they got a 7-iron in their hands. I go, give me 5 swings your way, doing what you think is right. And it comes out and they're 73, 72, 74, 75 miles an hour for the 5 swings. And I said, okay, do this 82 on the first swing. And they're like, they go like this. And they're like, that can't be right. They do it again, 81. They do it again, 80. They do it again, 83. And they're like, I don't care. This just isn't right. And I never see him again. So I experienced that a lot. And this is for real. And I'm sorry to say this. The last 500 people that came in to see me for a golf lesson, for their first lesson over the last several years, not a single one of them was working on something that was going to be helpful to them long term. Not one. Not one by mistake, like a broken clock. Now, they weren't all working on things that were going to hurt them. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's fine, but that's really not going to help you. So a lot of those kind of things. And it's because golf instruction has been centered around fixing the effects instead of the root cause. The running joke I always make is golf instruction for a century has been, you go into the doctor and say, doctor, I have a cough. And he goes, okay, hold your breath and you won't cough anymore. Well, yeah, I guess. But if you look at it the right way, the cough is actually a good thing. The cough is expelling the bacteria in your lungs, or the tar that's in your lungs from smoking too much, or whatever, or excess mucus that's being produced because the air in your bedroom is too dry. In all of those cases, the cough is a positive. So the average golfer, if you were able to snap your fingers and take away their casting, their flipping, their early extension, their hip stalls, and their over the top, every single one of them would hit it worse, because those things are a solution to get the club to the ball when they're out of position. And, like a perfect example of this is, people will come into me. You know what early extension is, right? The goat
Sure.
humping, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody wants to get rid of it. Some people, it's not even a swing fault, but nobody wants to hump the goat and have their friends make fun of them. So they're like, Monty, I can't get rid of my early extension. I'm too old. I'm not athletic enough. I'm too fat. I'm not flexible. So how do we get around this? And I go, you're not early extending because of all those things. And they're like, I'm not. I'm like, no, your early extension is when you swing a golf club, your club face is open and you throw the golf club out first. If you didn't early extend, you'd hit a 90-yard pull slice. So your body thrusts, it flattens the shaft, then you flip it at the bottom. And when you time it, you hit a nice little draw. And they're like, okay. I said, all you got to do is get the club face a little bit more manageable position at the top and just get in your head. The club goes away from the ball first move down, not toward it. That's a universe. Well, that's going to be a slower speed if I don't swing the club. The straight line is the shortest point between, and I'm like, oh, the golf swing doesn't work. And so, no joke, first swing, they get their wrist from here to here at the top, and then they move the club behind them. First swing, no more early extension. And they're like, I've been trying to solve this for 20 years with, putting something behind me and pushing my butt back and, stretching. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. That's not what was causing it.
Awesome. So you're based out of where?
Laguna.
Laguna, and you're online also?
Yeah, I do lessons on the Skillest app. And I do you know, most of my lessons are FaceTimes now.
Okay. So you're
So
like,
people don't, you know, I mean, some people like the hands-on in-person, stuff, but especially people that have been to me at least once in person, it's so easy just to set up an iPad at their driving range or in their hitting bay and just have me talk to them as if I was standing there.
I think that's actually a good model. I mean, that's a good teaching model.
Well, I made it. Well, most people don't know this, but I was the very first person to ever offer online swing analysis back in like 2010. Or like, you sent me your videos and I told you what was wrong. And then I made I mean, people had been doing FaceTimes, but I made them really popular during the pandemic. Um, in 2020, I was giving like 40 or 50 a week.
Wow. So now that you mentioned that pandemic, so we had these two spikes in the golf industry. So I was in the golf industry for a while there. I managed a big range company. And so I was part of the big Tiger Woods era in the early like 90, 97, 98, 99, 2000. And that was a gold rush.
Yep.
Patting down a little bit. Now we come back to the pandemic. Now the pandemic spike was a little different than the original spike in that now you had people that just had nothing to do in their house and they're indoors and they could play golf and they could take up this sport, right? And I don't know how many millions of new golfers that produced, right?
Can't get a tea time anymore. That's how many it produced.
Exactly. So, and now how many of those guys are going to the lesson tee and what are their perceptions? Because unlike the original spike that I mentioned, now they have access to a plethora of information and maybe disinformation, right? So,
Well, there's two kinds of new golfers. There's ones that come in and say, Monty, I watched Instagram and YouTube and it's really confusing. There's conflicting ideas. I'm a clean slate. Whatever you tell me, I'll do. Those are my favorites. And then there's the ones that come in, and most of them are not dicks about it, but a few of them are. But they come in and they're like, you know what, Monty? I've got a pretty good understanding of the golf swing. I just need a pair of eyes. And then I go, okay. And I patronize them a little bit and I say, okay, so what are you working on that's making you better? And they go, okay, this. And I go, okay, what's your miss? And they go, that. And I watch them hit a ball and I'm like, well, what you're working on is not helping you. But Monty, this is what you do to fix this. I go, well, not really. And I go, I don't, I feel, I say this all day long, not trying to be an asshole, not trying to be a dick about this, but here is the actual fact in this case. And then, I never want anybody to take my word for it. I go, who's your favorite player? Give me 3 swings on the tour that you love. And I will show them in a 2D video, the guy doing what I'm saying. And then I'll pull up some data that shows, here's what they measured. And then I'll say, okay, do it your way and do it my way and see which one works better. And then they're like, I'm in. It's really funny. The more people think they know about the swing, the more difficult it is to help them improve.
I agree with that. Uh, I mean, if you come in with clear, and that's
I always make jokes to people about this because I never want to sound like I'm smart, you're dumb, you're going to do what I say. I don't like teaching that way. So I say, look, I got a question for you. So a guy will say, this just happened recently for the second time. Guy comes in, he's doing something. And I say, okay, see that right there? That's why you're not hitting it straight. He goes, well, my brother-in-law told me to do that. And I said, okay. And he goes, and he hits it far and he's a really good golfer. And I said, okay. And I said, okay, let's look at this objectively. What's his handicap? 4. How far does he hit it? Like 300. And I go, what's he do for a living? He's an accountant. I said, excellent. I said, I almost got on the tour a few times, played in 2 of the last 5 US Senior Opens. I'm a +4, and I was the longest hitter in the world at one time. And finding someone 60 years old that's it farther than I do is a tough task. And I teach golf 2,000 hours a year. Who do you think has a little more insight into this? And smart people will look at that and go, you're right, but why would you say that then? And I go, you know what? That idea worked for him. Okay. And people get confused between what idea works for one individual and what is objectively correct in a good golf swing. And the people that like and you know what? Most of them are good people and they're well intentioned, but the number of people out there that this is their description. They were a really good athlete and very coordinated. They took up golf. They were self-taught and they came up with an idea early in the process that made them hit the ball better. And they've used it forever to get themselves down to a 1 handicap. They think that's correct. When in reality, they kind of lucked out on some mystery idea that generally doesn't work for most people. And they will argue tooth and nail that that's the right way to do it.
well, it worked for them.
Right.
That being said, when you encounter a student, right? So now I want to talk about your show. You're describing a lot of the commonalities in the golf swing as you've discovered
Yes.
and others. Now there are people out there that teach a systematic approach.
Yes.
Now, what's your opinion on that and how do you go about it? Is there
See, there's
um
a false sense of success there because a systematic approach is going to have extreme success with a small percentage of people. 10, 15, maybe 20%. So I'm not so I I very seldomly say that's the wrong way. The terminology I use is that's not the easiest way. Okay. So like I'm sitting here in Los Angeles and there are many ways for me to get to San Francisco. Okay. I could drive on 4 or 5 different freeways. I could leave at different times of the day. I could take a train. I could take a plane to San Jose, Oakland, or San Francisco. There are many ways to get to San Francisco. As a traveler, I want the easiest freaking way to do it. Okay. And there's a big misperception that what the guys on the tour do is beyond our capabilities. And these are the elite golfers and the elite athletes. When in reality, and again, this has been measured, the physical movements that like if you study movement X, whatever that is, when golfers shift their weight to the lead side, and 147 out of 150 do it a certain way, that's probably the easiest way to do it. And people always counter with what I was saying before. well, those guys are elite. They can do things we can't. And I'm like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Do you think all of these guys on the tour that have a 95% commonality in their swing are sitting on the driving range at the age of 12 going, someday I'm going to be an elite athlete and elite golfer. I don't need to do the easiest way. I'm going to do it a hard way just so I can look cool on TV. That's nonsense. There's a reason why 95% of the guys that have been on the driving range and at the course for 40 or 50 hours a week since the age of 8, 95% of them found the same way to get it done. That's probably the easiest and most efficient way to do it.
So, say for example, I went to take a lesson with you. I'm me. I'm who I am. Your approach is the person in front of you, right?
Yes,
And then the commonalities that you found in good swings and where I would be deviating from and how
correct,
it would affect.
correct.
Okay.
And yeah, and you know, I always tell everybody who comes to my lesson tee, your golf game is a math problem. If you're, let's say, a 12 handicap, 99, literal 99% of the time, a 12 handicap will do 8 or 9 things out of 10 like a 5 and do 1 or 2 things out of 10 like a 25. And that's why he's a 12.
Makes sense.
So if you fix the thing that they're doing like a 25, their handicap goes down quickly. It's really funny. Every one of my students has the same success arc. There's an amount of time where I get emails and texts, Monty, this feels weird. Monty, this feels awkward. And I'm like, well, of course it does. It's different than what you were doing. As soon as they get over that, this feels weird hump, their handicap goes like that. Sometimes the this feels weird hump is a week. Sometimes it's 6 weeks. Sometimes it's 15 weeks. But the people I have a 100% success rate with the people that if you have a setup problem, fix it, and then get this one thing right and hit the ball. Everybody who does that, and I call it the Nike drill, just do it until you can do it. I have a 100% success rate in higher club head speed and lower handicap. The problem is that it can be very frustrating at times, and the improvement arc is not always immediate, and people give up, and that's fine. I look, I've tried to lose weight a number of times. I'm a 200-pound guy, and then in the last 10 years I've gotten up to 250. I know what it takes to lose weight. I got to eat less, eat better, and exercise more. Well, I don't want to freaking do that. I want to eat cheeseburger. I want to eat cheeseburgers and pizza and watch college football. But every time I've said, you know what, I'm going to do it, I've been successful losing weight 100% of the time. And then, like, every time I lose weight, the pandemic happened and I gained it back. Had knee surgery, gained it back. Injured my back, was laid up, like gained it back. So, I always empathize with people to say, you know what, Monty, change is hard. You know what? I'm just going to enjoy myself. I'm a 12. I'm pretty good. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm like, hey, man, more power to you. The people that are happy with the current state of their golf game have more fun than the rest of us that want to get better. But if you want to get better, you have to change your narrative, change your belief, and get out of your comfort zone.
Makes total sense. Now, you said you were 60 years old. We're the same age.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you
I'm
doing?
almost there. I call myself almost 60.
I'll be almost 60 for the rest of my life. How's that?
Exactly right.
So, what are you doing these days to keep up your club head speed? What do you do? What would you do in the case of a guy like me at 60 years old? I mean, you lose.
So look, so this is a big debate going on. Okay. So there's the fitness people who I'm not against. I love the fitness people. They create great stuff. But whenever the fitness people open their mouths and say, here, here is the physical limitation that's causing this swing fault. I'm like, yeah, no, because I have that physical limitation. All of my clients have those physical limit and they don't have that swing fault. So being generally fit overall is important just to your health. Okay. If I lost weight, I would hit the ball farther. Okay. Speed systems. As a matter of fact, I just came up with my own. The video release for my new speed system is going to be before the end of the month. It's going to be available. The reason why those speed systems are horribly ineffective is they have no effect on the club face. Okay. And that's why everybody's practice swing looks so good. If you video your practice swing, it is functionally horrible. You make this beautifully aesthetic move, and the club face is 45 degrees open at impact. And all the jerks and spazzes you have are to square the club face up at the bottom, or you'd slice it 100 yards. Um, to get to that, that's the behind the scenes answer. The short answer to your question is the more efficient you make your golf swing, the farther you're going to hit it and the better your body is going to feel. So, like I said, I'm 58 actually, and I still swing. I'm 58 and I'm 50 pounds overweight. And I've only lost maybe 5 miles an hour club head speed over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 or 4.
But in your case, you've been fast your
But
whole
that
life.
doesn't matter. That
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
it's
I'm starting from up here. You're starting from here,
right.
but the decline should be slow, not fast. And
Okay, so
if your swing is efficient, your decline is slow. Here's what I always tell everybody. I go, if you're in the 50 to 70 category and you say things like, you know what? 5 years ago, I could reach this par 5 and 2, and now I can only get it to the front bunker. Your swing's probably pretty good, and you rarely haven't lost that much. But if you said, you know what, 18 months ago, I used to hit driver 7 iron on this hole, and now I'm hitting hybrid. There's something wrong with your swing that can be fixed.
well, I just played in this sort of Brooklyn Open here in New York, and they used to put me back in the tip it out there. I can't play 7,000 yards. I played 6,500, and the golf course became what I remember it being. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was much more enjoyable, and within my game, I enjoy.
Sure.
I was able to be competitive with the other. Everybody else is hitting it the same. You know what I mean?
You know, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be an 85-year-old man who is just now taking up golf or an in your prime tour player. There's always some ground to be made on making your movements more efficient. And when I got to be 40, I lost 30 miles an hour club head speed and my back hurt just taking it away. And then when I started to learn about the swing, I'm like, dude, I wish I would have known this when I was trying to make the tour. I was making it way more difficult than it was. You know, uh, I went from like in my 20s when I was the world long driving champion, maxing out at 150 miles an hour at like 25 years old, 26 years old. When I was 40, I was maxing out at like 110, 113. And then when I started to study the swing in 2013, 2015, when I was getting pretty close to 50, I was back up to close to 140 again because I learned what was right. Um, you know, as recently as like 2019, I still had some 200-mile-an-hour ball speeds when I was 52. And now, like, more than my age, my weight is what's holding me back. I just, you know, I don't exercise enough. I don't play and practice as much as I used to because I'm busy with my teaching career, and I'm the single father of two teenagers 4 or 5 days a week. So, you know, it's an excuse, but that's where a lot of my weight problems have come from just like At the end of the day, I'm freaking exhausted. I don't want to work out or hit balls. I want to sit on my chair with the dog and watch football. So, um, but in spite of the fact that I don't play and practice much and that I'm in terrible physical condition, I still swing at 120 because I know how to. You know, if if I had so I max out at around 120, maybe 123 or 5 on a good day. If I had my 40-year-old golf swing before I knew anything, I'd be swinging at 100 and it would hurt.
Now, when you go back to talking about the speed, staying on that topic. So a guy like me and swings in general, right? Injury prevention has
Yes.
got to be number one,
Number
you
one.
know.
So I actually turn off the parents of a lot of juniors because I tell them that because they come to me, I want my 5'11", 110-pound boy to hit it 300 yards. And they don't like it when I tell them injury prevention is the first priority.
Yes.
Um, and here's why this is important. It's common sense. Even if you don't know anything about anatomy or the golf swing, this common sense. If you're moving in a way that puts the least amount of pressure on your body possible, you're going to swing faster because your body won't be trying to protect itself. Whereas if you're doing all sorts of contortions and manipulations, your body's going to slow down to protect itself.
Right. So when you talked about your system and you talked about the club face, I just, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've always thought that if you had the proper sequence, now I'm not a fast swinger, middle of the pack somewhere. I can get to 101, maybe 102. And if I press it, I mean, I'd have
Sure.
measured myself at 121, 122, but that's
Sure.
just like, air swinging and swinging out of my socks, not something I would do on the golf course. But if we took it to like proper sequence and center face contact, smash factor, would you say that that would be like
The biggest Um, the variable in hitting the ball farther is hitting it in the middle of the club face. The biggest variable in creating more club head speed, which is the second biggest variable in hitting it farther, is proper sequencing in the transition, which is where I get in arguments every day. People say you don't hit it with the backswing. The impact is all that matters. Well, it's been proven that better sequencing creates higher club head speed. And if you have a poorly sequenced backswing, you're not going to have a well sequenced downswing.
well, you see, and there you go. There's that two schools of thought. So now you take a guy that says, okay, I want to take it back as fast as I can and let the rest of it, it's going to, and then you have a guy like Jake Knapp who's like smooth as ice and
Okay.
so,
Okay. Let's
so
discuss that. Okay. Now I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. This is a huge, huge misperception in the golfing world. How smooth Ernie Els and Jake Knapp and all those guys are.
Freddie Couples.
Freddie Couples. Okay. Those guys are not smooth. They are efficient. Those are two different things. Okay. I asked Couples and Els personally. So how much farther could you hit it if you didn't swing so smooth? It was a loaded question. They both looked at me like I was an idiot. Okay. And they're like, why would I swing smooth at a driver? Okay. So great story. This is an amazing, this is, one of my favorite stories about golf instruction. So at least 5 times a week, I have people coming in and telling me that they lack club head speed. And I tell them your backswing is too slow. And they're like, no, you have to have slow, smooth tempo. And I'm like, nobody good has slow, smooth tempo. And they're like, well, what about Els and Morikawa and Couples? And I go, they have slow, smooth rhythm. That's different from slow, smooth tempo. And then I put their swing up next to Ernie Els and I lock it on the first frame of the takeaway, and I hit play, and Els was hitting his wedge into the green while they're still in their backswing with their slow, smooth tempo. So I say, take it back as fast as you can. Center face contact goes up, club head speed goes up 10 to 15%. So here's the great story. Guy comes out, really rich guy from Hong Kong, comes out to me and says, Monty, I'm a very low handicap golfer, but I don't hit it anywhere. And I'm pretty, athletic and strong, and I don't hit it far at all. My club head speed is like mid 90s with a driver. So I get there, I set up my flight scope. This is when I was still teaching on grass. I teach indoors now. And I went to the bathroom. And when I came back, the guy was there hitting balls on the flight scope. And it's about a 50, 60, 70-yard walk to the lesson tee from the bathroom. And this is a tour level golf swing. I mean, this swing could be on tour. And I walk up and I introduce myself and I said, that is an amazing swing. And he goes, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm a scratch golfer, but I don't hit anymore. I go, that's because your backswing's too slow. And he had booked me for 3 days. He goes, how much is it to come for 3 days, this many hours, go play golf, blah, blah, blah. I told him what it was, a few $1,000s, whatever it was. And because it was like, 10, 15 hours that he wanted to spend with me. And he goes, no, you have to have slow, smooth tempo. And I said, like Ernie Els, right? And he goes, yeah, like Ernie Els. And I said, okay. So I filmed his swing. I put it up next to Els. No joke. Els was in his finish when he was at left arm parallel in the backswing. And he had hit like 10 drivers on the flight scope, and they were all 94, 95, 94, 95. There was 196, whatever. And so I said, and they were going out there fine, like 220, 230, a couple 250s that he really squared up. And I said, all I want you to do, just whip it back as fast as you can and hit the ball in the middle of the club face. No swing fault. No swing thoughts. First swing, 105. Second swing, 106. I said, okay, give me one more swing. Take it back with your arms and hands as fast as you can. Swing through with your arms and hands as fast as you can. 108, piped with a little draw right down the middle. He's hit 5 balls. He's been there for 5 minutes. He goes, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So he comes back to the next day and he goes, Monty, he goes, I shot a terrible round yesterday. And I'm going, I'm really sorry to hear that. He goes, no. I shot a terrible round because I hit it over 14 of the 18 greens and I shot like 87. And he goes, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. We're done. And he pulls a big wad of cash out of his pocket and paid me for the 12 or 15 hours he had booked me for. And he sent me an email, and I never heard from him for a while. He sent me an email like a year later. He goes, I'm hitting it like 300 yards. I'm a +3. All of my friends hate me. And when I turn 50, I'm going to quit my job because I'm wealthy and make the Champions Tour. So, whatever. But, I love telling those big success stories. Those are not about me. I never want the success stories to be, look at how great of an instructor I am. I want all the success stories to be about, if you will just change your perception of what you're supposed to do, you can become a better golfer. My goal as an instructor is that you shouldn't need me anymore unless, you're struggling and you need me to like make sure your setup gets back online. But if I'm doing my job after, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 lessons, whatever, you should know what you're supposed to do and you shouldn't need me anymore. And then come back and see me once or twice a year.
And that's that whole codependency thing. I'm in New York now. I live in New York in the summer, and I go back down to the Caribbean for the
Oh,
winter.
I'm sorry.
No apologies needed. It's good. So there's a pro I live on a golf course, a country club. So there's a pro there, and he's got this thing where where the golfer progresses, right? And then he figures out a way to digress, right? It's third world stuff, but
I'm sorry to say that's not uncommon, even here.
yeah. So with you coming out with this speed training thing right now, the fact that you have a unique perspective in that you've played on tour, you've competed long drive, you're teaching conventional golf to conventional golfers, right? That kind of packages it a little differently or a lot differently than what's coming out now. So that seems like something most of us can look forward to in the sense that it incorporates real golf. You know what I mean?
So
Is
here's
am I right or am I off?
100%. Here's my marketing pitch. My marketing pitch is if you made a list of everybody in the world who won a world long driving championship, who played golf at the highest levels, and who has been recognized by multiple sources as being one of the top instructors in the country, that list would have one name on it. Okay.
It would have you and Mike Austin.
Well,
You would know.
so look, don't get me started on that. Never has anybody made more money off of a cart path bounce.
That's
Okay. But anyways, so if you
Louis Oosthuizen hit a 500-yard drive similar to
right.
that.
So if you add to that I on a daily basis learn from and consult with the world's leading experts on 3D technology and biomechanics of the swing, it's going to be really, really hard to find someone who has a greater combination of academic knowledge and practical knowledge of what you're supposed to do to hit the ball farther. So the program that I came up with the first third of it is learning to deliver the club face correctly. Okay. The second is learning to deliver that club face at a greater speed. And then the third phase is let's turn this fucker up and let it fly. And so it's, you know, because, people always get upset. Yeah, when I did this speed system with the system and the dry swing, my club head speed went up 8 miles an hour, but when I hit a ball, it didn't go up. Well, your club face is open, too open, you know. So so I said, you know what? Uh, you know, I don't know if anyone's going to buy it. I hope they will. But this is 40 years of experience of hitting the ball far myself and teaching other people to hit the ball farther. And it's not complicated. Like my other videos have been like educational. Here's what actually happens in a good swing. This one is totally different. This is today, do this for an hour. Today, do this for 15 minutes, do this for 45 minutes. And then it's 30 days. I call it 30 days to 300. I hate marketing, but I'm
Whatever.
forced to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a 30-day program. You can do it in 30 days. You can do it in 60 days. It doesn't matter. It's if you, and if only, the only teaching that's in the video is I'm going to be like, when I see people do this, here are the ways they do it wrong. So make sure you video yourself and you do this the right way to get the benefit out of it. Otherwise, it's just, you know, and I'm specifically releasing it now because you don't really need to do it on the range or even in a hitting bay. You can do all of these drills and you can do this program with a foam or a wiffle ball in your living room with a golf club when it's minus 20 outside.
Excellent. So unless you have something you want to add, Monty, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Oh no, I'm a nerd. I could talk about this stuff all
So yeah.
day, every day. Aside from my two children, my greatest joy in life is seeing the excitement of a golfer when their slice goes away, when their shank goes away, when their club head speed goes up 8%, when they shoot a career low and they come back. I broke 80 for the first time. That is so much fun for me. And I get so much joy out of that, that, you know, and that's why I put out so much free content because I want people to have more fun playing golf. I would make way more money than I do if, you know, if I did things different.
Yeah.
But I have too much fun making people better at golf.
Well, it's a testament to your love of the game
Yeah.
and what you've gone through, your own personal experiences. So
Yes.
sometimes we're driven by our own experience.
Yep.
Try to well, how we
My
yeah.
own failures as a player drives me to help other people avoid those failures themselves.
Well, I'm glad you came on, bro. I really
I
enjoyed
appreciate
since you like it, we'll check in from time to time. You know, when you release
love
your
to. I love
bring
talking
it
golf.
back on. We go on forever. I'm not like you. I got nothing better to do. And if
Love
you
it.
come to New York and give a class or give a school, let me know.
I do I do a school in New Jersey just outside the city every year.
Okay. You come into the city and I'll take you to Cat's Deli. We'll have a pastrami. You ever seen that one?
I took my son to Cat's Deli when I took him to New York in December. My 2 favorite places in New York are Cat's Deli and Bleecker Street Pizza.
Okay. That's my area. I grew up on the Lower East Side. That's where I'm from. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure, Monty. I really enjoyed our conversation. Like I said, we'll uh, check in again when you release the,
Sounds good. Thanks
thank
for
you.
having me.
All right. Okay.